Well, hello there. Yeah, I know. I'm a week late. I'm a day late, excuse me. But at least we're still in the same week. Yeah, this has not been a fun week. Up and down mentally, um, and just bad luck overall. Um, Tuesday, while driving into work, I blew a tire, put the spare on, and then later at work, the spare was flat, and yeah, so that was uh, that was not fun. So, but it has been taken care of, so we don't have to worry about that for a while. And work is work. Work sucks, but unfortunately, it's one of those things. I haven't got a whole lot accomplished this week, mostly because of fits of depression and being annoyed with bad luck. I did make a little bit of headway on both my soul to keep and the fast fading light. So hopefully, um, now that this week is over, I'll be able to put it behind me and focus on them. I'm also thinking about adding another temporary, another unfinished project to this mix. I was actually typing it up a bit before I started doing this. It's another Division Two story set in 2191, I believe it is. Takes place a year after Wanderer, and I just have to remember when Wanderer was moved to. And excuse me. It involves another courier with Division Two, and when we see her being accused of committing a crime that she didn't do, but all the evidence is pointing to that she did, and her going through trying to clear herself, and does have a twist at the end. If I can keep it, if I can pull it off, I think it'll work very well. But it's another project that I had been working on, and then for one reason or another stopped. And I'm really concentrating on getting those finished. Um, I think I do have a good idea on how to continue forward with my soul to keep. It was just a matter of getting back into it after so long of not doing first draft writing that I was literally just out of practice. I was so busy rewriting that I wasn't first drafting. I wasn't thinking of what happened next. I was trying to fill plot holes and rewrite scenes. So, uh, so hopefully, I'll get my feet back under me, if you will. Um, I also was thinking maybe I'll talk about the books during these only instead of starting with eyes open. I'm going to work backwards and start with Upon a Far Distant Shore. This is this is the most recent. This is the most recent book. Was published in July of last year. 2000. It was July of 2018. And this book um, does fill several niches in my timeline. It involves a organization known as Section Alpha, which during the 21st century is actually part of the United Nations peacekeeping force, and as many people within the organization, as many people in the organization like to describe it, it's the only part of the United Nations that actually functions. Yeah, and you can probably derive from that what I think of the United Nations. That's beside the point. They're kind of like the Men in Black, if you will. They do handle the paranormal, anything that involves vampires, werewolves, immortals, mystics, which is the 21st. In my fictional universe, mystic is the 21st century name for a telepath. Mages, extra-dimensional and extraterrestrial beings are all dealt with by Section Alpha. They do recruit vampires and werewolves and mystics and mages within their ranks so that they're able to handle most any situation that comes their way. For example, the team that my main character Artemis is on has as one of their members a werewolf. He was the one who actually trained her. He was the only one physically capable of training Artemis. And why that is, I'll explain in a minute. Artemis is also my first superhero character or quasi-superhero character. I based her abilities on, I took cues, I should say, from some other well-known superheroes just as a general guideline. As a general rule, for example, she's the strongest Captain America. She can climb walls like Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, if you will, Spider-Gwen, if you're into that, Miles Morales, if you're into that. She has extremely sharp senses. She can see finer details. She can pick a voice out of a crowd. She can pick a scent out of a crowd. Going forward into the future, many people attribute her as the first enhanced human. And it's very odd how this story came about. Now, I'd always wanted to write a superhero story, always. But I just didn't want to do a traditional, superhero origin story. I wanted to have the character already have her abilities, or his abilities, because it kind of bounced back and forth for a while. And I had this scene in my mind of a person lying face down in the street in the rain. Didn't know who that person was, didn't know where they come from, didn't even know if it was a man or a woman at that point. And then then the character told me that her first name was Artemis. I knew nothing else about her at that time. Her name was Artemis. And then I had to figure out who she was. For a while, it took place on yet another fictional, in another fictional universe where technology in the 21st century was slightly more advanced. We had genetically engineered humans now instead of in the 22nd century. And they were essentially bred to be soldiers, kind of like the clones in Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and Star Wars, the Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. The clones were bred to fight the war and kill the Jedi, but that's beside the point. And then I didn't like that idea. And then I remembered this little vignette that I had written back in 2007 uh, at the last con that I wrote it at the last con that I had gone to over in Orlando. The day after was let go by Home Depot, but that's again a story for another time. And I was sitting there. I remember being massively disappointed in the con, and I had my notepad with me, and I just started writing. And I came up with this organization known as Section Alpha. And originally it was going to be a superhero team along the lines of Justice League or the Avengers. But I didn't go anywhere with it. It just wasn't coming together for me. And I remembered them when I was starting to nail down the details on Artemis. And I thought about it, and it's like, well, what if Section Alpha would employ somebody like her, as well as normal humans and the vampires and all that, and some kind of covert organization, not to not like the Men in Black. I mean, they're not walking around with neuralizers, wiping out people's memories, but they are handling the extraterrestrials, extra-dimensional vampires, werewolves, immortals, mages, and mystics. Or anything else that falls outside the mandate of normal law enforcement. So I thought, okay, great. I know who she works for. And I based it down here. I based her team down here in Florida. I grabbed some old names, some names for characters that I hadn't used in a while, made them her teammates, alluded to some things that happened with another team member, and that was done. Now I just needed to know about Artemis. And I don't know where it came from, but the last name Xian, Xian, came into my mind. And I put it together, Artemis Xian. I liked the sound of it. And then I thought, well, okay, so Xian is a Chinese last name, and so why don't we just make her Chinese? Okay, is she Chinese or is she Chinese American? And then I did some research and said, okay, her parents immigrated from China in the mid-'80s. She was born in 86. Her younger sister was born in 89. Now, her parents wanted their daughters to have out of the ordinary names, if you will. That's how she ended up with the name Artemis. Her sister's name is Melina Xian. And bam, there was Artemis. And then were the details of figuring out exactly how did she gain these abilities, and then I was able to bring in yet another thread that actually, in a extended way, kind of ties this to My Soul to Keep. In a way, you could think of the three stories, Upon a Far Distant Shore being the beginning, The Fast Fading Light being kind of the middle, and My Soul to Keep being the end. Because while The Fast Fading Light doesn't deal directly with the Tralamaphon, which were the ultimate adversaries in Upon a Far Distant Shore, their presence is felt, and they do interact in a way with an extended part of the setting that of My Soul to Keep. So they do all kind of tie together, but I wouldn't call, they're more of a serial than direct sequels. and then it was just a matter of writing it. And I wrote, and the writing went pretty well. Of course it was me. I had to stop for a while, and I can't just sit and write something in one sitting because that's me. Excuse me. And once I finished it, and I was actually editing it, there were things that were starting to bother me. Not with the story itself, external things that were beginning to nag at me. Most of my main characters are women. I'm not trying to push an agenda. I'm not trying to say women are better than men are better than women. I'm not. If you look at the stories, my male and female characters are pretty much on even footing. I try and treat all of them with a measure of respect, and treating each one equally good. And I'm sitting there, and there's Artemis, and I'm picturing, hearing people from one side of the political arena carrying on about how well, it's another men are evil. Men are evil, women are great, even though it's not like that. And then there are scenes where the semi-bad guy, if you will, her immediate adversary, if you will, a man by the name of Balthazar, who goes by the name Balthazar. He had a normal name that he hasn't used in a while. He was exposed to the same I'm trying to figure out how to say this without spoiling it too badly. He was exposed to the same process, if you will, that gave Artemis her abilities. But while Artemis still looks like a normal human, albeit a bit tall, Balthazar looks kind of like Hulk with gray skin, bad teeth, and yellowish eyes. He can talk. He is fully has his senses and strength and speed and and his senses are pretty much on par with Artemis's. He had an entirely he had the more extreme mutation. And there are three fights that Artemis gets into during the course of the story, and she does take a beating. She does. She doesn't just single-handedly walk in and with a few carefully placed punches and kicks takes down her adversaries. There's one point where she is literally being overwhelmed by henchmen, lackeys, foot soldiers, if you will, and she's down, and she's on the verge of getting her ass kicked, but she manages to get her way out of it, and I do show her reacting to it. I do mention that her body, that she's literally covered in bruises. She is more durable, so she can take a hit that would put, at the very minimum, put somebody in the hospital. She can take, she's going to feel it and she's going to bruise, but nothing's going to break. And I could just hear the voices from the other side of the political spectrum saying, "Oh, you're saying that women are weak and they can't handle themselves in a fight." And it's like, and this is going back and forth in my mind, and it's like, all of you just shut up, because what I finally succeeded in doing was blocking out the outside world and saying, you can all go screw yourselves. I hate both parties. I'm kind of borderline lowercase. I'm borderline libertarian lowercase l. I tend to be more more liberal on social issues, more conservative on fiscal issues, and sorry, I didn't mean to get into politics, but I know what my characters are like, and if you're actually reading the stories and paying attention to the characters' actions and what they do and what they say and how they behave, you'll see where I really stand. Artemis is one of my favorite characters. I do have a sequel planned, which is why I ended the book. I always I always used to do this. I did it once when I wrote a fan fiction. I never got back to that. On the last page, the story of Artemis Jean is not finished. Sorry if that was backwards. There is at least one sequel, and I will get to it one of these days, but I have too many other things that I have to write first. So that's a little look at Upon a Far Distant Shore. I don't know if I'm going to talk about the books every week. There's 8 of them. I've got 2 more. Raven is ready to go. Stranger, I did the last edit on it. I'm really happy with it. I like Denise. And I like her growing relationship with Nicola, her partner. But I don't know if I have to get the cover made, and I have absolutely no idea what I want the cover to be. So that's going to slow me down a little bit. But I'll get it together. I'll come up with something that I think best suits the story. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to talk about a book every week. I kind of do these off the cuff, off the top of my head. So I don't know literally what I'm going to be talking about until I sit here and start talking. So I will probably be back to doing these on Friday. I'm also going to try and get back to reading excerpts from the books, which I have done in the past. I would also like to. I have an editing program that I downloaded. I just have never sat down and actually tried to learn how to use it because, that takes time, and that's time that I'm not writing. See, but I'll figure something out. And that's it. That's it for now, guys. As always, like, comment, fave. If you're really feeling generous, subscribe. Hit the little bell. I think there's a little bell down there so that you can see when the next video is ready to go. All the links to all the books will be down in the information below. Since this is technically still Holy Saturday, for those of you who practice Happy Easter. I believe it's also Passover now, so enjoy. And remember, we are each of us the heroes of our own stories and the villains of someone else's. Take care.